Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about the Canon R5c. So if for some reason you haven't heard the news yet, Canon is coming out with a new cinema camera and it is based off of the R5 build. So it is going to be their smallest cinema camera yet. And the more I think about it, the more I'm coming to the conclusion that this might actually be the perfect cinema camera for me. But before I get started, I wanted to thank you guys because I'm almost to 1,500 subscribers. My journey so far on YouTube has been a really fun one, and honestly, I can say it's enhanced my life because I get to talk to people like you who have similar interests, and I am really thankful that this platform is even here because it's just a great community to have access to. So thank you again, and if you're not subscribed and you like talking about cameras on the photography and video side, then definitely consider hitting that subscribe button if you like this content. So before I get started in talking about why the R5c might be a perfect fit for me, I do want to talk a little bit about my transition getting into video work, because I do think that extra information will help clarify my perspective. So I don't know exactly how long ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I purchased a Canon RP and actually got two of those cameras. Mainly for photography, but at that time I thought it would be interesting to get into YouTube, so those were my starter cameras for YouTube. And honestly, they work great. You had the dual pixel autofocus in 1080p, and the 1080p was a little bit over sharpened, but it definitely had a nice crisp picture for YouTube. I really doubt that the people that were watching my YouTube videos at that time, or are still watching them, when I did use RP, we're thinking, oh, this is a little bit over sharpened. So I do think it had a really nice usable 1080p. Now the 4K in that camera is a different story, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. At that time I was also using a 24-105 f4 RF lens with the Canon EOS RP, and that, again, that's such a nice lens. I do have a couple of videos on that lens. I have a review on that. I also have a video talking about the order in which I acquired RF lenses and why, so if you haven't seen that yet, definitely check it out. I'll link it above. So shortly after I acquired those two Canon EOS RP cameras, I found a really good deal on a Canon EOS R. So I bought that, and then the seller was actually unloading some audio equipment that paired with the EOS R, so I bought that too. I think at that time I also bought a Godox light to use for YouTube, and it was a smaller light, so it was nice for taking on location if I had photography or video project. So I was really lucky at the time because I happened to be able to get into a fairly large project with the Canon EOS R camera to really be able to test it out. And honestly, the camera was great. The company didn't care if I was using 1080p footage or 4K footage. I bought a gimbal at the time and stuck the Canon EOS R on that so I could get really nice smooth looking footage. During this period of time in my life, I was really trying to take in as much video information as I could. So I even did a little personal project. I shot a short trail running video, which I'll link above if you guys haven't seen that. But that was super fun to do, and it also showed me that you don't need the latest and greatest technology to put together a video. You just have to know how to use your camera. But I couldn't help myself because after that I got the Canon EOS R6. I did a few smaller projects with that camera and I loved it. I did struggle a little bit with the color coming out of that camera. If you shoot in C-Log with that camera in I think it's the EOS original color matrix, then the skin tones become like really yellow. So you have to set it to neutral to get more of like a standard skin tone rendering. So I also had those issues with the raw files on that camera. So that paired with the overheating and not being able to have a backup for the overheating kind of led me to gravitate towards the Canon EOS R5. But again, the Canon EOS R6 is awesome, and the 4K 60 footage coming out of that camera is amazing. It's even better than the 4K 60 that comes out of the R5. So a big reason that I decided to pick up the R5 was that it was also a better hybrid camera. So you could easily switch between photo and video, and you also had custom modes on the Canon EOS R5 for video. So you could quickly switch between 4K 24 frames per second, 60 frames per second, 120. So whatever you use the most, you can set that to a custom button, and that's not something you could do on the Canon EOS R6. And also a fun fact about the Canon EOS R5 compared to the Canon EOS RC is that when you're switching between photo and video on the R5, it's actually quicker than on the R5c. So for particular hybrid shooters, the R5 might actually make more sense since you can switch between those two settings quickly, or quicker. Now hopefully Canon does fix that before the camera releases, or with a firmware update after it's released, so that you can switch between those two modes quicker on the R5c, but we'll see. So with the Canon R5, I was actually really fortunate to be able to use that camera on some big budget projects, and it was a little bit nerve-wracking because I had an understanding that the camera did overheat and could overheat, but I wasn't too nervous about it because I was pairing it with a Ninja 5, and I had tested it out enough where I was comfortable with the amount of record time that I had in multiple settings. So for this particular project, I was shooting 4K 60 for a long period of the day, and at times it could be 2 hours consistently, and that's with being able to kind of shut the camera on and off quickly and give the camera a little break in between shots or locations. But again, it was pretty consistent where I had that camera on shooting 4K 60, and I got the overheating warning once or twice, but I wasn't too worried about it. They happened to come at times where I could shut the camera off for a little bit because we were kind of like walking to a different part of the building. So it showed me that the R5 can be used in a professional setting, but it will give you some anxiety if you are pushing the camera. I've also used it for live streaming in 1080p and didn't have any issues with that, obviously. And then I've used it for smaller projects where it's mainly kind of like a talking head interview style video shoot, and in one of those I did get the overheating warning, but again, I wasn't too worried about it. But that one kind of surprised me because I was shooting in 4K 24. I mean, it was HQ, but I wasn't expecting to see the warning. So all in all, the Canon EOS R5 has been an absolute dream to shoot with. Again, I shoot more photography than video, but I am getting into video more. But for photography, I couldn't really ask for more, except for maybe a sensor that has a little bit better dynamic range performance. But the dynamic range on the current sensor is enough for me. The autofocus acquisition and speed on the Canon EOS R5 is amazing. And when you pair that with the awesome burst rate that you get with the mechanical shutter, which is 12 frames per second, I can't really ask for more. So lately I've been going back and forth between the R5c and the C70, and this is where you guys come in, because I'm very interested in getting to understand the perspective of C70 owners who are thinking about acquiring the R5c, or if you have a C70, I'd just be curious to understand your thoughts on the R5c. So feel free to share in the comments section below. I'd love to have a conversation with you. But yeah, initially I was thinking about getting the C70 even after I heard about the R5c, because of that sensor performance. Even though it's a crop sensor, you do have a wider dynamic range, and that ultimately kind of leads to a more professional looking image. But the more and more I kind of think about the footage that I get from the R5 and the particular scenarios that I'm shooting in, I don't know if I necessarily am at the point of my career where I need to worry about that too much. It would really make more sense for me to acquire the R5c for a few different reasons. So first, I can sell my Canon EOS R and put that towards the R5c. And technically I could do that and put it towards the C70, but I won't have a backup photography camera if if I go with the C70. So it would make more sense for me to sell the Canon EOS R and get the R5c, so I have two photography cameras, and if the R5 dies on me when I'm working on photography or video, then I have that R5c that has the exact same sensor. If I'm shooting with both cameras for like a wedding or something, color matching the photos and the videos would be super simple. I mean, that right there, this first reason is pretty much enough for me to kind of just stick with the R5c and not go with the C70. Even though the R5c doesn't have the in-body image stabilization, I don't care about that so much if I have the Canon EOS R5. So kind of being able to work with both of those cameras it's like a perfect pair. Like if I want to focus on photography and have that awesome in-body image stabilization, that's great. Or if I'm shooting video and say I'm working with a wide angle lens, like the 15 to 35, and I need to turn the IBIS off anyways because I don't want to get any wobbling when I'm shooting the video footage and I have it on a gimbal or something. That's perfect too. So being able to have the option to switch between the two would be absolutely perfect for me. And then when it comes to photography, I'm definitely comfortable with shooting with a camera without IBIS. I did it before the days of the Canon EOS R6 and R5, so I'm sure I could pick that up again. So the second reason is something that I already mentioned, but I'll say it again, and it's that I don't necessarily know if I'm at the point in my video career where I need the better dynamic range on the C70, and I don't necessarily think that the clients that I'm going to be working with are gonna notice. I definitely think I'll be able to do fine with the Canon R5c in terms of kind of building up my business and eventually kind of saving up for a more professional cinema camera, but I do think that the R5c will be plenty for me right now. Okay, so my third reason for going with the R5c is future proofing, and the idea of having the R5 and the R5c, these two cameras that can shoot in 8K RAW, with the R5c going up to 60 frames per second, which is amazing, is it's really cool to think about how long I could use these cameras. And I mean, not too many people are shooting in 8K right now, and the 4K footage that you get out of these cameras, it's really nice. Yeah, so I anticipate these cameras lasting for a very long time. The cool thing about the R5c, and this definitely depends on your perspective, but to me, I do think it'll be cool having the option to shoot with an 8K RAW file that has a lower data rate than the one that's on the R5. So, they also have the option on the R5c to shoot an 8K RAW light option. So I'm hoping that those file sizes are more manageable so that I can start using that RAW workflow a little bit more. So reason 4 that the Canon R5c would be perfect for me is that I already have the R5, so the accessories that I have will most likely work on the R5c. So that includes extra batteries, cages, camera bags. So really anything that I'm using for the R5, I'm hoping that it will work with the R5c, since the components that they use to make each camera are the same. Alright, so for my last reason, I do think that if I purchase the C70, I would be compelled to buy that speed booster, which is very expensive, by the way. Even after that, since I only have RF glass right now, I would have to acquire some EF lenses, which would cost even more money. So I could just stick with the crop sensor and get a wider angle lens to kind of compensate for that, but I just think it would make more sense if I could just utilize a full frame sensor like the one on the R5c with my RF glass right now. Alright, that's it. Let me know what you guys think of this video in the comments section below, and if you guys have any strong thoughts on either of these cameras or the R5c in general, then definitely let me know. I'm super interested. Thanks for watching.